Now, as I said, the use of wood in making of dolls evolved into different techniques that people tried, and the Germans did many of their papier-mâché, and the French had a technique that was called carton moulé. And basically, it is a form of papier-mâché, but it's more pressed, it's made slightly differently, and it has different components in it. And we have here from the Rosalie Museum, to me, again, one I absolutely love this doll. She is a carton moulé doll from France, about 1820 or 30. One of the key points, of course, you can always tell is the high-waisted dresses. It's a very distinctive fashion style of that time. But this doll is wonderful because she has her original coiffure, and I'm going to turn her around so you can see the detail of the back of the hair. You can see the detail of the back of this gown. It's a grand doll. And again, look at the embroidery on the bottom of the dress. It's very, very fine. But in case you don't like this dress, by the way, her hair decorations match the embroidery on the dress, and she has a choice of 3 different bonnets that she might wear with it. But if you didn't like that dress, guess what? You have a choice of 2 others you can pick from. This one is very, very fine, with almost like, it's hard to tell if it's a woven or painted design on it, but very, very finely done and beautifully cut on the top, and the sleeves just fitting just perfectly. Another, which is more of a dressier gown and has beautiful bows on it, that's very fine. And she has more bonnet down here. She has other little accessories, and she has a wonderful cape, and she just has so many great things, and she deserves them well. Standing behind her, we have, and it's very hard to know, they obviously did not originate as dolls in the sense of what we call a doll, as a plaything, but they were dolls in the sense that they were human representation of human beings. And here we have an absolutely lovely one with beautifully carved wooden hair. But what is in the downcast eyes, looking at the child she is holding, what is really remarkable is the metallic embroidery work that is done on not only the gown of the mother, but the gown of the child. Extraordinary gold metallic work. If I hold this up, you might be able to see it a little more carefully. It's very, very fine, and I'll show you the back side so you can see how intricately that is woven. Very, very fine pieces. Many of these were used in ceremonial parades at the time, and then they would rest in the convents or in the churches in between times until they came into the hands of collectors many years later. Now, moving around here, we have the popular, always sought after, the Germans were moving into the porcelain dolls, but they still loved their wood, so they would make the fully articulated wooden body with the porcelain limbs. We have another wonderful example of a doll, a very unusual facial painting done in Germany. And this doll is known as Jenny Lind because she's wearing a classic Jenny Lind costume, including her hat and including an early piece of sheet music of a song made famous by Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale, as she was called. It's a very fine doll. Beautiful. And look at her pierced ears, by the way. Very, very unusual to find in a porcelain doll like this. This is a very choice doll. We have another very fine early porcelain doll, and I have to lift the dome because I want to show you her face and her profile. Once again, that very patrician, regal look to her. And then look at her hair. Look at how the hair is done at the back. Is that wonderful? Any of these porcelain dolls with these very rare coiffures are just so impossible to find that it's just such a treasure. All right, we have other wooden dolls here. This is a very, Rosalie, again, always on the hunt for stories. We have a wooden doll that came from a Swedish family and has connections to the Swedish royal family at the time, and you can read all about it in the catalog. It's quite intriguing. We have a doll that is attributed to be a Flemish wooden doll of the period, and she has her own original wooden base that she stands on with a little provenance written on the bottom of the case. She has a great face. In the back, we have, and I want you to look at the inset photographs we've done of their back of their hair. because these are extraordinary. These are the French royal dolls, the Poupées Royales, a wonderful, wonderful research book done by Francois Timer, in which he did a great historical study of these French wooden dolls known as the court dolls, or the Poupée Royale. We have here representing Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. And their hair is just absolutely extraordinary. I'm not going to discuss the details of the rest of their body. You can read about it in the catalog, but they're quite detailed, to say the least. And they are absolutely remarkable dolls. The whole history of these dolls, they're extremely rare. That's why many collectors don't know about them. But the history of them, if you do not have that book by Francois, I really urge you to try to acquire it somewhere, the Poupées Royale. It's a wonderful story. These are part of the rarest examples of them. Now, let me just stick with those for a minute, because then the controversy remains, because other examples have come out, and some are very definitely early period. We're talking the late 1700s. But then others come along that people have questioned a little bit. Are they 1700s, or were these made for the exhibition that took place in, believe it or not, the early 1900s in Paris, when they were trying to resurrect their whole doll industry and the interest in dolls at that time. And these wonderful dolls were created. We have two examples of women here, and we have the little boy. And I have to tell you, this little boy, he's got a surprise, and I'm not discussing it here. This is a family-rated show, folks. I'm not discussing it. But I'm going to tell you, he may be little, but he's not really little. Great doll. Two wonderful dolls here in their great costumes, and representing, when Francois did the work, he was able to document who were they representing. Many of them were telling satirical stories of the history of France, or really tragic stories of what went on, and the people represented them. So we have two other great ones. So while we're staying with that, this concept of doing a doll that represented royalty kind of moved into England again. We've kind of come full circle back to England. And in the 1930s, there was a very famous British play called The School for Scandal. And The School for Scandal mocked a lot of the early royalties. And a series of dolls came out. They're really rare. You very, very ever seldom find them. They're known as the School for Scandal dolls. And they were made to represent the various I'm sorry, I want to take her down to show you the back of her hair, too. I mean, this doll is so extraordinary all the way around. And they were made to represent the various characters that were in there, the satirical characters. And so the dolls themselves are a form of satire. Very, very wonderfully done. Let's skip back to here just a moment. I don't know. Once I pick these dolls up, they just want to have a life of their own. They want to escape, I guess. Other wonderful early dolls from early time period. I love this one. That is a pressed leather face. It's French, and I know she's ugly as sin, and she just looks so old with all those wrinkles in her face from the leather, but there's something about this doll that just really captures me and kind of speaks to me. She has her original costume on her, the quilted petticoat, and not a petticoat, it's a full chemise all the way up, and the wonderful double bonnet, the underbonnet, and then the bonnet on top. Those are little enamel eyes that are cut into slits in the pressed leather. It's a very, very intriguing doll in my mind. And sitting next to her is a mystery doll, more, I guess you'd call it more of a folk doll. Very, very simply done, probably American, hard to know where it was made. Just like that round bedpost type head that looks like the top of a bedpost. And the only sculpting on it at all is the nose, the little defined nose. And then she has those painted great big eyes, a little tiny mouth, and she's sitting here very demurely, even with her little purse still intact that she's had forever. And based on her costume, we're talking, it's wonderful embroidery, look at that. We're talking there about 1820 again. Very lovely doll. Here, one of the most beautiful porcelain dolls I've ever been privileged to handle. I'm going to remove her hat so you can see her face most clearly. And look at the painting of the eyes. Extremely different than what you usually find. And with a painted upper eyeliner and very, very delicately fringed lashes, which you just really don't find on these China dolls that often. But the eyes are very distinctively painted. differently. Look at her regal nose, and I will give you a profile view of her. And then the back of her head with her wonderful pinned up coiffure. Very lovely. And a nice early costume, and of course her bonnet. She, by the way, we don't know who made her, and I want to tell you she has a French kid body. So if that can be a clue, it's something for you to discover. We have another lovely porcelain doll here, and she has a secret at the back of her head, which is this wonderful sculpted comb. Always with the China dolls and the bisque dolls with sculpted hair, you really kind of have to look at them all the way around so you can find what surprises they might have been. The hairstyles at the time were as much involved with the back of the hair and the side of the hair and the ornaments that could go in the hair as with the front of the face, where very often hair was pulled back to let the beauty of the face shine through. And that translated itself into its dolls. And of course, there is Izana Walker. Always there, standing at the peak of American dolls, of what every collector would want to own, because she really represents not only women doll collectors, but she represents an important signal point in the beginning of the American doll industry. Her wonderful cloth doll, and the example we have here with the very finely sculpted eyes and their little ringlet curls. I just always loved this story when I years ago just read about the beginning of it in one of the Janet Joel book, when she was trying to figure out how to make the dolls, and she woke up in the middle of the night and said, "Eureka, here's what I need to do." And I thought, life doesn't change. Everything, people remember things or see things or figure out things to do in their most commonplace circumstances, and they don't have a big think tank or anything, they just figure it out. And that's what Izana Walker did, and she was a good role model for us all to follow. Well, one of the things I love, because I've been cataloging dolls for 54 years now, and here's something I have to tell you. I constantly find things I've never seen before. And maybe I just missed it, or maybe it really is rare, I don't know, but that keeps the excitement going. And I know as collectors, that keeps the excitement going for you to find something that's new, refreshing, a different angle, even the same doll, but with a little different twist to it. So Rosalie had a collection of Topsy Turvy dolls. And came to this one, and I was saying, oh, it's really nice. It's got the hand-painted face on the black doll and the hand-painted face here. And then I started looking at the construction of it, and I started looking at this, and I said, hey, that's a Colombian doll. And I was really excited because I never knew that the makers of the Colombian doll also made a Topsy Turvy, which they clearly did. And this is it was a wonderful treasure to me to find this. Made the Topsy Turvy a very special example, but also added to the pleasure of our interest in knowing about the very famous 1893 Colombian doll. And that's just a rare treat, and this is a beautiful, beautiful example. Now, this doll, I'm waiting for somebody to run with this doll and come up with some other fabulous research. It's a Martha Chase doll, and many of you will recognize it because it's a very distinctive kind of face. And it's a heavy doll, which means it was one of her hospital dolls. It was made for training nurses in the hospitals and presumably had the weight of a young child or a young baby, although I haven't known a lot of babies that heavy, but so be it. But it was designed to teach nurses training. Look at the complexion. Not a black doll. This is not a black doll. This is a Native American doll. And this is so fascinating because I have never seen another Martha Chase doll like this. And according to Rosalie Wild's museum record she had, the doll had been commissioned from Martha Chase by the Bureau of Indian Affairs in America. And when you think about this, oh my gosh, this is the time that all of the Native American children were being kind of educated, let's say. It was a really important time in the history of the Native American in America, and this doll is not only rare as a thing, as a doll, but it's rare because what its possible place is in our American history. I think this doll is an absolute treasure from the museum. I'm quite taken with the whole background of it and would love to know more, and whoever buys it, please share with us whatever you can learn. This is another wonderful black doll from the Rosalie Museum, and that face is so distinctive. And I don't know, something kept talking to me when I'm cataloging and saying, that doll looks like Topsy in Uncle Tom's Cabin. It looks exactly like the original illustrations. And I did go back and I found some that do look very much like her. No documentation. This is just me saying what it looks like, but you can, whoever buys it can research. A very, very different kind of face. In any case, very, very wonderful doll. Another black doll. This is a poured wax doll with inserted hair into the head. Rosalie had no information about the doll, and I have no information to share except that it's very comparable to the type of dolls that were being made in England in like the 1890s, the wax dolls with the inserted hair, and it has the same soft cloth body with the poured wax lower limb. So research, for whoever buys it can continue their research. It's a fabulous doll, regardless. Take a look at Shepherd Baby. Now, he's a great-looking Shepherd Baby, and you love him and you want to have him, made for the Philadelphia department store. But here's something which is really great about him. Look really closely. Look at his little shirt. There is a boy riding an eagle, an American eagle, and there is lettering on the shirt to Philadelphia. What a wonderful costume for this doll, and appears to be all original. It's really great. And we had to bring along the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz because this was released by Ideal when the movie came out in 1939, 1940, and this doll does still have, is so absolutely perfect and has its original costume. It's wonderful. There are many wonderful things like the early stove in the back with its separate cooking compartments and its copper pots, and there are many that we just wanted to show you that as an example of what we have. And we have our, overlooking the entire scene, our incredible glass-eyed mannequin man. And I don't know, what can I say? There he is. He's been in the office now for 4 months, and we have, every time we walk by, we jump because who's there? But you need to have him in your home. He's a pretty handsome guy, actually. Very, very nice. And most unusual as a mannequin. Certainly would have to date back to like the 1860s or 70s, looking at that hairstyle. But now we come to more dolls from Lily Bates. Last year we had the celebrity and film stars from the Lily Bates collection that was in the Rosalie Museum. The dolls were made by a German artist in the German secessionist art movement of the early 20th century. Most of these dolls were made in the mid-1920s into the early 1930s. And she was an incredible artist, and her life story is absolutely wonderful. And as a clue to all of you, I do want to tell you that there is a film being produced about her as we speak, which will tell some of the wonderful stories about her background. An absolutely fascinating person, but a great artist as well. And she designed this series of children, and I brought out some of them. I think there are 25 in the auction. And I wanted to show you the many, many different faces. Do not think of these as just being like models and it's the same one over and over and they change the costumes, which are delightful in themselves. But she had wonderful expressions on faces that would suit the mood of the child or the costume that they were portraying. I mean, like Buster Brown is really one of my favorites up there holding his little dog. And I love the earlier fellow who's from 1885 who's holding a toy horse on room. See, I like the little boy dolls, I guess, because this fellow right here with his boat is absolutely wonderful. The dolls were made actually in Austria, costumed in Austria, and they remained in Austria when Lily Bates had passed on. And they were there for some time until an American, and let me show you this label right under here, Mr. Hofheimer, who was an art dealer, was traveling through Europe in the mid-1930s, and he was looking for unusual kind of things to import to America for his galleries. And he came across these dolls, which had still been held in this gallery in Salzburg, and he bought the entire collection, the celebrity dolls we sold last year and these wonderful children. And he brought them back to America and toured them around the country for about 10 years into wonderful department stores and art galleries and things like that. At the end of that time, the Traphagen Fashion School in New York saw them and approached Mr. Hofheimer and purchased the entire collection from him. And they were shown at that school for some, I don't know, 20 years or so. And then the school was into financial difficulties, knew they had to sell the collection, and so the woman who had been curator at the time bought the entire collection and stored them in her tiny little New York apartment. Now you have to know that every one of these dolls, there probably were 80 in all, each came in their own leather box with the name on the outside saying to match Girl of 1920, leather box, Girl of 1920. And she stored them in her apartment. And I don't know how, I mean, I've seen New York apartments, they're not that big, folks. And then Rosalie found out about them. And Rosalie purchased the entire collection from her, and there kept them safe in the Rosalie Weil Museum of Doll Art and History for about 20 years until the museum closed. And now you have an opportunity to buy one of these wonderful fashion pieces. And each one, to me, is like an art character doll in itself. And if you think of the times that they were being created, it was during the whole time of the art character movement in Germany, and indeed they are. We have them all together, but take each one by itself and look at that face, and it's pretty extraordinary.